And let's take you live to New Delhi, where the cricket conclave is currently being held. Rajdeep Sardesai is all set to hold an event, a discussion on the pressures of World Cup with leading cricketers Clive Lloyd, Arjuna Ranatunga, Allan Border and Sourav Ganguly. Fix that audio for you in just a bit, but that session will be about the pressures of the World Cup and it will be on till noon. We have a power-packed lineup for you through the day. In the evening, you will see all the 7 World Cup winning captains from different countries all together on one stage. Meanwhile, shortly we'll be getting you the details of that discussion. Rajdeep Sardesai, they're moderating that particular session on the kind of pressures that these captains have had to face during World Cup.
We're going to start the session with the use of the word pressure. It's an 8-letter word, but it often makes the difference between winning and losing a World Cup. And I'm going to start with the oldest man on our panel, because he won the first World Cup. Because the general feeling, Clive Lloyd, was the West Indies team in 1975 and 79 was so good that you didn't have to deal with a word called pressure. You were just too good for the rest. And you were seen as the cool cat. That's how you were called. They called you the cool cat. Were you as cool as the world believes you were?
Well, talking about pressure, we had a lot of pressure in the last couple of weeks here, actually. But I think in 1975, we weren't the top dogs, and I think Australia was a better team. They were the better team, and people probably thought they would be, you know, the winners of the trophy. But I think we gelled together in the sense that most of our players, we started here under my captaincy, and that's why I have a sort of great affinity with India. And we gelled together rather quickly, and a lot of our players played county cricket, and they got accustomed to playing one day cricket. So really, we weren't that bad a side, but we weren't the #1 side. So the pressure was on, and I think the game that really brought it home is when we played Pakistan, and we needed 65 to win, 14 overs to go, and the last pair in. So if you talk about pressure, that was pressure. I drank about 15 bottles of pale ale, actually.
You drank 15 bottles of?
Pale ale. Because my accountant, funny enough, came in the dressing room and he said we were going to win. And he said, oh, well, I've decided that you will win this game, and he put some money on it, I presume. And we came through in the end. So I was quite, you know, sort of pleased about that, and we thought from there on in that we wouldn't lose the trophy, because it was a very sort of tight situation.
I presume I shouldn't be asking you what you were drinking after you won the World Cup, right?
Oh, well, there's a lot stronger stuff than that.
A lot stronger stuff. Okay, great. You know, likewise, Allan Border, winning that World Cup in India in 1987. It was a tough time for Australian cricket. You hadn't won anything for a very long time. You hadn't won a World Cup, and you were struggling as a team, and yet you come to India and pull off a remarkable win. What is it that takes one team to win a World Cup? Is it about who handles the pressure, or is it simply about who's the best on that given day?
Oh, there's no doubt there's a unique pressure involved in playing in a World Cup. Because it only comes around every 4 years. It's growing in stature. Every World Cup that's been is getting bigger and bigger. So there's different pressures that come with playing in a World Cup, because as a player you might only ever play in one World Cup. So it's and that one chance to show your skills and play in such a big tournament. So when I think back to 1987, we were very much an underdog team, very young side. A very young Stephen Waugh was in that group that we brought to India. We were a bit fortunate in that a lot of the players that played in the 1987 World Cup had toured India in 1986. So we were a little bit accustomed to the conditions that we were going to face in 1987. And we were quite fortunate in that year in that we sailed under the radar a fair bit because of a very young side, unfancied. And the thing that I do remember very strongly is we had a very good preparation. We were in Chennai for about a week, 10 days before the first match. Our first 2 matches were in Chennai. So we were able to get accustomed to the conditions pretty quickly. And we had a fantastic first game against the hosts, India, where it was a one-run victory, and the momentum just built from there.
Is it more difficult? Do you think the pressure is more on you when you play in India than any other part of the world? Is India unique in that sense? You're faced with 60,000 people, not a single one cheering Australia. Is it much more difficult to handle pressure in India than any other part of the world?
Look, it's the fervour of the cricket fans here is second to none. I don't think there's any, but I think there's probably more pressure on the host nation, India. The expectation is so high. So when I think about the World Cups I played in 1992 in Australia, there was probably more pressure because you are the host nation. So the expectation is higher. But certainly in this part of the world, there's unique pressures because the expectation from the crowds are so high.
Actually, Arjuna Ranatunga, you were the first captain to win a World Cup, in a sense, in the host country. Because Sri Lanka was one of the co-hosts of the 1996 World Cup. And as Allan Border says, pressure is probably the greatest on the host country, which is why host countries often find it difficult to win a World Cup. India won it, of course, in 2011. Was there greater pressure on you because you were playing in the subcontinent? Or were you just happy that you were playing the final in Pakistan and not in Colombo?
I think we were the underdogs when we started the tournament. No one expected us to win a tournament. And take from 1975, not a single time we could qualify for the second round, not even the semis or the finals. But we had a lot of plans. We did a lot of homework before the tournament. But we were very lucky that Australia and West Indies didn't play the first round. So I started with 4 points. So I knew that I was in the quarterfinals straight away. And the only time we realized that we were a really good side when we came to Delhi, beat India in Delhi. That's the time all these youngsters realized that we have a very good chance in the World Cup. And coming back to the pressure part, once again we played the quarterfinals in Pakistan, semis in India, and finals away in Pakistan. So we never had the pressure sort of thing created by the Sri Lankans.
No, because whenever anyone saw Arjuna Ranatunga on the field, you seemed very relaxed. It almost seemed that you were, on a Sri Lankan beach at times. You never seemed agitated. I never saw you getting agitated once or twice, maybe on a cricket field.
I think you should ask that question from my colleagues. They will give a different answer, but I always wanted to keep cool. I never put pressure on the other cricketers. I always absorb pressure. And what I did, I wanted to get 100% or the best from the other players, and that's what exactly I did.
Your body language was very different to Arjuna Ranatunga. Arjuna Ranatunga always looked very cool on a cricket field, and Sourav Ganguly from time to time always looked agitated on a cricket field. Was that pressure getting to you, or was it simply the way you were? What is this word pressure? What does it really mean?
You spoke about body language, and quite different from Arjuna. In India we always hear this word that India is a sleeping giant. And at times I felt with my team that with so much of talent, they were a sleeping giant and I had to wake them up. And I'm not that sort of a person, what you see on a cricket field. Off the field, I'm a completely different laid-back person. But I had to get the team going because there was so much talent in that side. And it never delivered at the right time, especially overseas. So, it started from the tour of Australia in 2001 when Steve came down, and I realized that suddenly if the side's pumped up and if the side's fighting, we'll look a much better side than if we are just allowed to India.
Steve was here, so we're not going to talk about the instance where you kept him waiting. We'll probably ask him that, about a toss which you actually kept Steve Waugh waiting, and you didn't come. Was that part of trying to get the pressure on the other side? Was it a deliberate tactic to get under the skin of Steve Waugh?
No, I was searching for my blazer. It was lost somewhere in the dressing room.
That's a bad excuse. He's laughing. He doesn't believe it. After all these years, he's not going to believe that you kept him waiting on a cricket field because you were not giving him your blazer.
It's 14 years. I've forgotten the reason. It's been 14 years now. And it's always been great to play with Steve. He's been such a champion. And to see him bat and see him win games for Australia has been really fabulous.
But let me ask you specifically about pressure. 2003, Mr. Puri spoke about that match in Johannesburg, the final, which we lost. And many believe we lost it in that first hour when our bowlers just didn't, were just not, seemed to be under pressure. There were a lot of no balls, there were full tosses, there were wides. Was it pressure? Is a World Cup final particularly about pressure?
Yeah, it is. And I think we were under pressure right throughout the tournament. I remember after the first game, we managed to beat, I think, Holland. It was a very close game. And we heard back in India that stones were thrown at the houses, the windows were broken, cars were broken. So Indian cricket team goes through this all the time. It's not the first time, and it will not be the last time. And I'm sure something will happen before the 2014 World Cup, 15 World Cup in Australia as well. So we are used to this pressure as Indians. And over the years, I've seen that if there's a little bit of a shake-up with Indian cricket, they do well. You see what happened in England. We lost the series 3-1, and then there was a bit of a shake-up. Everything was changed. And in a week's time, we looked at different sides. So we Indians at times, I think, react to pressure because it's a part and parcel of Indian cricket. You have to deal with at all stages of their life. On a Monday, you'll be the worst team in the world, and 2 victories by Saturday, you're the best team in the world. So we deal with this, and we've got used to this.
So pressure is greater in a sense on an Indian team than a Sri Lankan team, a West Indies team, and an Australian team, possibly.
Yeah, possibly, because a lot more exposure, a lot more media, a lot more people interested in the game. I'm sure there will be pressure on those countries as well, but somehow I get a feeling that there's a bit more when India plays.